been playing for quite a while now. The eye to pass over so we can get some kind of a break through here with these absolutely unrelenting winds.
I think that there'll be little change here. It'll go up, it'll get a little cooler, it'll get a little warmer like it always has for millions of years. It'll get cooler, it'll get warmer. It's called weather.
You can see it for yourself. We're being hit by a pretty significant band from Harvey as it is making landfall here about 50 miles, as you mentioned, south of where we are.
An emergent scientific truth, for it to become an objective truth, a truth that is true whether or not you believe in it, it requires more than one scientific paper. It requires a whole system of people's research. That's what we have with climate change as induced by human conduct.
I want to know what would happen without human activity. The climate change. No, it's a simple question. The climate is always changing. You've conceded that. You're saying that human activity has increased the speed.
With 50, 60-mile-per-hour winds, gust occasionally to hurricane force here in Corpus Christi. This may be some of our worst weather.
Dating back to the ancient Greeks, many people had proposed that humans could change temperatures and influence rainfall by chopping down trees, plowing fields, or irrigating a desert. Then, hypotheses became more of a reality in 1712, when British inventor Thomas Newcomen invented the first widely used steam engine, paving the way for the Industrial Revolution and the growing use of coal. The Industrial Revolution caused a spike in carbon levels in the atmosphere due to our increased use of coal and other fossil fuels in factories, cars, and homes. Concrete evidence came in 1896 as Swedish chemist Svante Arrhenius concluded that industrial-age coal burning will enhance the natural greenhouse effect. His models were the first to suggest that our increased reliance on fossil fuels will likely alter the molecular composition of our atmosphere, likely for the worse.
The data is there. 97% of all scientists say that it's happening. When you get more expertise in the scientists, it goes to closer, pretty much 100% that it's there. When it comes to environmental science, teaching it, it's a little bit different than, let's say, biology. In environmental science, the whole class is based on sustainability and the climate. And because 97% on average believes that climate change is happening, that's where I gear everything to. I really try to stay neutral. I try to convey the data and not bash anybody, but I usually, talk about this is what's happening in our politics today, or what politicians are doing, or did you hear this from yesterday, what was passed? So I really try to convey that and not give my personal beliefs.
For a long time, public view of climate change relied on a broadly scientific basis, but the attitude of climate change started to shift in the 1980s when it started to gain more attention and became a mainstream issue, and not just a scientific one.
I was a press secretary for Congressman Byron Dorgan from North Dakota. Climate change was always an issue in the background. I dealt with a few issues in addition to dealing with all the public relations side, but just understanding how Congress works, the level of attention and understanding that members of Congress have, how the committee process works, it really helped me understand why things often don't get done when it seems pretty obvious that we need to get a new policy enacted.
As global climate change made its way to the front cover of the Times magazine in 1981, the issue became published to the point where both Republican and Democratic nominees in the 1988 race promised aggressive approaches on the issue. In 1988, Republican presidential candidate George H.W. Bush gave a speech in Michigan calling for the government to address deforestation, acid rain, and most importantly, climate change.
Some say these problems are too big, that it's impossible for an individual or even a nation as great as ours to solve the problem of global warming, or the loss of forests, or the deterioration of our oceans. My response is simple. It can be done, and we must do it.
However, starting in the late 1990s, big energy companies such as Exxon formed the Global Climate Coalition in efforts to show that the science behind climate change was flawed. The coalition lobbied congressmen and paid for advertisements that portrayed climate change data as unreliable. By the 2000 election between George W. Bush and Al Gore, climate change became a deeply partisan issue. The Democratic Party acknowledged its existence, effects, and needed solutions, while the Republican Party took the side of the fossil fuel industry in denying its existence, or at least not admitting it suppressing enough issue to draw governmental attention.
Unfortunately, it has become far more partisan than I think it needs to be. It's one of these issues that, with other issues as well in science, that I think members of Congress have to increasingly educate themselves so that they can discuss issues as how do we solve the problem rather than just pretending we can stick our heads in the sand and ignore them going forward.
George W. Bush's administration rejected the Kyoto Protocol, an international agreement on global warming negotiated under President Clinton, in which developed nations pledged to reduce emissions by an average of 5% between 2008 and 12. The end of Bush's presidency saw a Supreme Court ruling stating that dealing with greenhouse gas emissions was the federal government's responsibility. The 2008 victory of Democrat Barack Obama brightened the future of climate change by making strides despite increased partisanship of the issue, joining the United States in the Paris Agreement in 2016, an agreement signed by 190 countries to lower global emissions in order to halt global climate change and lessen its effects. The election of Donald Trump, an avid climate change denier, has put the world at risk. In June 2017, President Trump announced his decision to retract the United States from the Paris Agreement. The Trump administration has also taken steps to increase the United States' reliance on coal, a non-renewable energy resource that produces large amounts of greenhouse gas emissions and pollution.
As it has kind of spun into more partisan discussions, it's become less based on science and more people basically saying, no, we don't even believe the science, which I think is unfortunate because it really puts the United States out of the global effort to figure out how to deal with the challenge.
Throughout the past couple of decades, climate change has become a hot topic in American politics, highlighting the underlying conflict between science and politics. Although strides have been made throughout most of the world, one important country has now removed itself: America. President Donald Trump has reversed decisions to solve climate change and contributes to the broader conflict between science and politics, a conflict that most understand exists, but none understand a solution.